I'd love to hear who's here and how do you stay safe when you are using AI? Christina, how do you stay safe when you are using AI? What are your ideas?
I don't put anything personal into AI.
Good call. Good call.
I don't
Absolutely.
need them to know my name or
Okay.
my birth date or anything like that. But then I started thinking about, can they track my IP address?
Oh, that's a good point. Yes, yes. All right. Well, I mean, I did watch Enemy of the State back in the 90s, and I'm sure that it's much more than that, what they do now. So wanted to let everyone know that this webinar series is based on our the topics in our California Department of Education AI guidance. We were the second state in the nation by 6 days to release guidance. And there is a bit.ly here leading to the website. All of the recordings from past webinars actually have just been added there as of a couple of weeks ago. So those are there. This will be added at some point once it's ready. And we also have a resource kit available now as well. Now, don't worry, if you missed those bit.lys, it's okay because everyone that's registered is going to get an email following this webinar, likely tomorrow or the next day, with the slides and resources. So definitely would encourage you to check out the resource kit. In fact, one of our speakers for today is from San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools, which is featured in the resource kit. So there are real life examples in there, and it is there for all of you. All right, so I will introduce myself and my colleague here. My name is Catherine Goyette. I am the Computer Science Coordinator for California's Department of Education and am involved in all things AI for the department. And I am joined by my colleague and friend, Dr. Christina Mattis, who is the Digital Equity Broadband Coordinator. And so, I was wondering, Christina, when we're talking about safety and making sure we are being careful with data privacy in terms of use, how does that fit in when we're talking about bridging a digital divide, right?
Oh gosh, that's such a great question and hi my voice is going to come and go, so we're just going to go with it for right now. Um, really thinking about bridging that digital divide, it's thinking about having that access to technology and then having access to the systems and tools that are needed for our students to thrive and succeed. Because the reality is that we do live in a digitally connected global world. um, Global world is redundant, but a digitally globally connected, however we want to put those words together. And so we do need to make sure that our students know how to use technology thoughtfully and safely and responsibly. We can't just take it away from them, but we also have to be mindful of, well, how are we actually integrating technology? We can't just use it for the sake of using it, right? In
Yeah,
instruction. So how is it part of the instruction and not just an add-on or an afterthought? And how do we really look at modeling what it means to be safe online? So how do we as adults model it in school, at home? What it means to use technology during dinner time, or what information is just a little too much information that we don't want to put out there.
yeah, great,
And
great
so
points. Yeah,
yeah, and then and I'm sure we'll talk about this as we go on in this great conversation with these incredible experts that we have on the panel today, but thinking that AI is being seen everywhere across the various fields in education, whether it's HR, payroll, um, and we're even seeing AI being used in the medical fields as well. And so it's all around us. So how are we all working together to keep each other safe?
Yeah. What I love about what you said, Christina, is that our CDE guidance, and here at CDE, we do believe that it is important to make sure that our students learn to live in this world, but we have to make sure that we do it safely, right? So we're going to hear from a global kind of perspective in regards to what should districts be thinking about. But if you are an educator here, or you're wondering, what does this look like in the classroom? How do I teach my students this stuff? We're actually going to hear from an instructional coach and teacher as well, so that we can see what that looks like for students also. So a lot of things we're going to go over today. Of course, one of the first things that we think about, this is from a Teach AI slide here, that's an global organization that we're involved with, is there are privacy laws that we are obligated to follow. We have FERPA and COPA, and so wherever you're at in the educational system, we are required to follow these. So that's something that we're going to need to be thinking about. And what do parents and students think? So in September of 2023, this survey came out and indicated 73% of parents are concerned about privacy and security of student data, and 62% of students themselves. And so we definitely want to make sure that we address this moving forward. This is a screenshot from the resource kit that has some ideas of what we should consider in our districts as we are thinking about AI and making sure that we have some safety guidelines in place. We are now going to hear from some speakers. In this series, we always hear from others. You don't want to hear from just me and Christina all the time. We want to bring in people that are actually doing great work and supporting our schools and our students. So we are going to start here with David Thurston. And so David, so glad that you are here. If you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you, and we'll go ahead and get started. And feel free, one moment, I just want to let everyone know the chat's open. Feel free to ask questions or make comments in the chat as well.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate our partnership, both at San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools and with SITE vis-a-vis the CDE. So thank you very much for inviting us. My name is David Thurston. I am the Assistant Superintendent of Technology and Information Systems at San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools. And I just happen to be next year's president-elect, or this year's president-elect, next year's president for the SITE organization. And we can go to the next slide. I'll tell you a little bit about SITE and why I think we have a role in this conversation regarding privacy. So SITE is a membership organization, and we represent K-12 and community college IT workers. That includes your help desk staff, right? Your data specialists, anybody who's working in the IT shop, your administrators who are in charge of the IT shop, whether that be a director, CTO, or assistant superintendent. So we're a membership organization, kind of like AXA, kind of like a CASBO, but we're really representing and producing resources for that side of the house in terms of districts for that IT shop. And a lot of times we have ed tech professionals as well as members. So we do have a lot of certificated members. Sometimes they're administrators of IT departments, but oftentimes they're in the classroom and they're using our resources. We have a wonderful annual conference this year coming up in San Diego. So if you get a chance to make it, please do, because it is selling out quickly. And there are a ton of AI related resources this year. So we can go to the next slide. So we've put a lot of thought, both as an organization and as individual members, into AI security and safety considerations for schools. In fact, we've put together a number of resources vis-a-vis our site data privacy services, what I'll talk about shortly, but also some resources that are available to school districts to deploy right away in terms of policies, in terms of acceptable use language, in terms of ethical use language, and parent notification. So really it boils down to data privacy, policies, processes, and procedures. This is what SITE can bring to the table. And this is what we want to remind school districts that are really important before rolling out these tools. So we can go to the next slide. So AI questions to consider, right? We all know about the PII questions. We really are concerned about AI and these AI agents' access to the personal information of our students, not only our students, but our staff, and even our parents and other partners, right? We oftentimes store a lot of data about our partners as well. And we're very concerned about AI's ability to access that, use it appropriately or inappropriately, and potentially disclose it or use it harmfully, right? So we really are centered around our policies and practices and our resources that we produce at SITE as protecting the PII. We also are really concerned about notice. We think it's really important to be transparent when AI is in use at school districts, how it's being used, where it's being used, and the data that's being used in order to leverage the power of AI, right? We also put together some work regarding acceptable use. It's very important to be transparent with not only our instructors and our school site staff and school district staff, but also our students about how to ethically and appropriately use AI. This is these are templates essentially associated with responsible use policies that you might see in school districts, computer use policies. These are really important just to do, again, transparency and set expectations, right? And then again, parental consent. Parental consent is an important component of using student data in ed tech related tools or education related tools. And it's going to become only more important as parents express a lot of concern about potential use of their student information in these AI tools. So we think it's going to be really incumbent upon districts to get ahead of that game and start to be transparent about what tools they're exploring, what tools they actually implement, and how that data is used. So these are really core questions that districts need to start asking themselves and bringing in their partners, their teachers, their parents, their curriculum partners to talk about what AI looks like in their applications, what AI looks like in their classroom, and what kind of data is going to be best used and how that data will be protected from inappropriate use. So we can go to the next slide. And it's really important to think about this in order to future-proof your policies and future-proof your discussion, because this just isn't about chatbots like OpenAI's ChatGPT or Microsoft's Copilot or Google's Gemini or Anthropic's Claude, right? Those are the kind of user-facing interfaces for AI. But what we're starting to see, and we're going to see really soon, is rapid integration of the same tools, not necessarily chatbots per se, but the same kind of processing tools integrated into the applications that we already depend on. So I'm thinking about assessment systems, student information systems, right? ERPs, which are your business applications, and a whole host of other applications that teachers depend on, like just online curriculum offerings in general, will soon be AI enabled. Students and teachers may interface with individualized chatbot agents within those applications, but where the real power is going to be using that data. And there's going to be a lot of pressure from those vendors to monetize that power and bring value to the applications, but then that requires a lot of exposure of data, right? So this is not just about chatbots. Right now, you might be dealing with chatbots or some kind of forward-facing tool that's just being prompt-based, but in really what's going to end up happening is a lot of the ed tech tools and the business tools that we use at school districts are going to be AI enabled, and these conversations have a place in setting our policies of how we deploy those, right? We really think that this is probably going to be in the next 1 to 2 years where we're really starting to see consumer-based or basically offers of these companies coming to school districts soon. So we can go to the next slide. So site working with the CCEE and in general through our site data privacy services, which I'll speak about shortly, really kind of produced a student data privacy roadmap. And this student data privacy roadmap is just a quick visual guide to help districts understand the student data privacy protection process, right? And it's about, it looks like 8, 9 steps here, or 10 steps here that really to detail about kind of the efforts involved in protecting student data application by application, data source by data source, right? And it does look daunting. And in fact, it can be daunting. I'm going to talk about some resources to help you through that process. But this is a quick, simple guide so that when you're starting to think about deploying AI products, to say, hey, have I gone through these steps? Have we as a district gone through these steps? Have the administrators started to ask questions related to these steps? And do I have the policies and procedures and authorizations in place that are related to these steps in order to move forward? So this is a great quick roadmap about that process, right? And this process, this roadmap is informed by our legal obligations, both at the federal level as discussed by Catherine, but also at the state level. You may not know, but we have, I think back in 2012, if I'm not mistaken, AB 1584, could be 2014, AB 1584 was passed in California, and that requires vendors who host, produce, store, process student data, typically on their own environments, to basically adhere to a certain set of privacy and protections about that data, right? That is a very powerful law because it invalidates contracts if those vendors do not adhere to the rules set forth by AB 1584. And one of those rules is actually signing a rider to a contract saying we are AB 1584 compliant, right? And so this roadmap really helps both vendors and districts ensure that they're 1584 compliant, because that's one of the most potent rules really in the student data privacy conversation within the state of California. Move to the next slide. So let's talk about those resources, because we talked about a lot of responsibilities school districts have, and that can be daunting, especially if you're a small school district, you're an IT shop or a purchasing shop or a curriculum shop of 1, 2, 3 people. You're thinking, oh, wow, we might have, a dozen apps or more than that, right? A dozen pieces of curriculum that all have digital footprint. They all have to assign a data privacy rider. I have to evaluate them. Well, there is some hope, and this isn't a solicitation, but this is a notification that, if you're a site member, if your organization is a site member, you can become a member of our data privacy services. There's a fee associated with it, but we have a whole team at site dedicated to ensuring that roadmap goes into place for each and every one of your applications. This is a team that does the negotiations with the vendors to ensure that they sign those, the California version of the National Data Privacy Agreement. They maintain records regarding the expiration date of those agreements, and they update those agreements to meet the modern requirements that we all have. Specifically, now those agreements are updated about AI tools, right? So if you're thinking about like, hey, we've got all these AI tools we're looking at, or even just in general, all these ed tech kind of correct instructional related tools, even operational tools that deal with student data, but I'm not necessarily sure I'm AB 1584 compliant. We don't really have this kind of roadmap process in place. It might be worthwhile checking out the both the Student Data Privacy Agreement, the National Student Data Privacy Agreement that anybody can use, but also the site data privacy services that will help you implement that with fidelity. It's pretty affordable and it offers a lot of perks. So if I can move to the next slide. We also have a resource that's open to everybody in the state of California and also on the national level too, not just members, but our team at site, both through our board and through our staff, put together an AI guide. This is an AI guide for IT shops, but it's worthwhile looking at it at a district perspective, right? It talks about the technical expectations that IT shops should have and districts should have regarding implementation of AI tools, specifically about data integrations, and it also talks about the data privacy protections. And this really covers a slew of different types of AI technologies, including chatbots, data integrations, and then things that some districts that are big enough or interested enough to host their own large language model processing on-prem, which we have seen some districts do, develop applications with their own models or their models that they've licensed. This actually will help them kind of size and scale that application properly from the IT perspective. So this is a free resource that's available. It's been vetted by a number of districts. It was produced by myself and a number of people at site with the collaboration and cooperation of a number of districts and experts that have been working with AI for a couple of years. In that resource guide, really important, we worked with F3, SBCSS, and F3 worked together to put together some sample AI policies. This also includes a superintendent's policy, which is similar to a board policy and can be really used in many cases in lieu of a board policy. It's a superintendent's policy that sits for the superintendent of schools at the County Office of Education, like an elected official, but it basically governs the use of AI at an organization wide, right? And typically you want one of these in place, not necessarily a superintendent's policy, but a board policy at a school district. The language in the superintendent's policy is very similar to a language that you would find in something like a rider to board policy 4040 about computer and network use and kind of IT use in the school district, and could be actually considered an addendum. It would just have to be kind of modified to meet your needs as a district and stripped out of some of the superintendent's language, but it is available. And this is the basis for the discussions that F3 and the California School Boards Association are already having about modifying a gamut policy for all school districts regarding AI. So we think that this policy is actually going to end up being in large part used for the final CSBA policy. Additionally, with that additional resources, and I think if we go to the next slide. Oh, no, we'll go back. I'm sorry. So in that sample policies library, we have sample acceptable use policy for staff, right? We also call those responsible use policies. This is language that clearly articulates the district's expectations regarding the appropriate use of AI, including privacy protections, articulating privacy protections that staff really should remember to take when they're individually using AI agents. We know that staff have already gone out and gotten themselves Gemini accounts or ChatGPT accounts and are taking advantage of the wonderful time-saving features that these tools bring, but we don't necessarily have a consistent way of monitoring whether that's happening, in terms of adherence to our privacy practices. So this helps. This responsible use policy really helps you articulate that to staff, and it's also a great framework for basing your trainings and your kind of reminders to staff about that, and also to allow it to grow to encompass other tools. Along with that, in the library, we have a student acceptable use policy. Now, a lot of people, when they talk about student acceptable use or student ethical use of AI, they immediately go to cheating. And that is a concern. That should not be our only concern. In fact, our primary concern should be really equipping students with the know-how to how to use these tools ethically, because that's what's going to be expected of them in the future. And in fact, it's going to be expected of them probably right now. So once the school district decides on the tools that are appropriate for students and staff, these responsible or acceptable use policy templates can really come into play in helping set those policies, set those expectations, and serve as reminders and serve as templates for trainings and digital citizenship trainings as well to reiterate that message. So really happy with those. And then also in the library, we have that sample parent notification letter. A lot of districts take it upon themselves to notify parents about the ed tech tools or give general descriptions of the ed tech tools that they use, particularly in their parent handbooks or maybe on their website. This language is really about AI and being transparent with the AI, and so provides you some template language so you're not just staring at a blank page, right? And allows you to kind of customize it, if you will, and use that as your parent notification for when you start to roll out AI tools in mass, right? Or as an organization as opposed to an individual classroom. So this resource, really powerful. We'll be looking at it year to year, keeping it updated. If anybody has any contributions they'd like to make on it, again, more technical, more policy related, kind of a little more back office related, if you will, but still kind of sets the framework for really effective use in the classroom, really effective use in the back offices as well. So if we go to the next slide. So basically recommendations that we at Site have come up with, and these are recommendations that we think that IT directors would make, right, or IT CTOs would make, or assistant superintendents of technology would make to districts in executive cabinet or to sites considering AI implementations, right? Is first, adopt the California National Data Privacy Agreement, whether you do that individually or through, let's say, the site privacy services. Highly recommend the site privacy services, but you can adopt that policy individually. Let that become your rider. It's extremely powerful for ensuring privacy, ensuring hold harmlesses, and also ensuring transparency with these companies, right? You should expect vendors and service providers to disclose third-party provided AI features. This is going to be really important. Our tools that our districts already use, many of those tools and the people who develop those tools don't necessarily have the development capacity nor the money necessarily to develop their own in-house AI implementations. So they contract these things out. When they contract these things out, they need to disclose and also hold those third-party vendors accountable to the requirements of AB 1584, to the requirements, your specific privacy requirements as articulated, let's say, in the National Data Privacy Agreement. So understanding that this is not just, let's say, for an example, iReady's native AI agent, it's iReady using Microsoft as a third-party contractor or some smaller vendor, and those privacy protections have to be extended to that third-party provider, right? So that's got to be clear and transparent, right? So districts really need to start having that conversation about third-party providers, right? Certainly establish AI elements in staff acceptable use policies. These are a little different. We think they're a little different than your standard ed tech tools, and so they do really deserve a carve out in your acceptable use policies for both staff and students, right? And then again, that transparency. If you're transparent, the controversies become a little less difficult to deal with because there will be controversies. We know that this is a kind of cutting edge technology. We know that despite our best efforts, it's really difficult to be on top of data governance, which sometimes can lead to data breaches, data leakage, inadvertently inappropriate use of data. So if we're transparent about the data we're using, we're doing our best, putting forth our best efforts to communicate how it's being used, allowing parents to be a part of that conversation. It cuts down on the controversy, it cuts down on some of the potential problems for effective implementations. So I think that's really kind of our data privacy recommendations as it relates to AI and those resources that Cite brings to the table. Got to really do a big shout out to the Cite privacy services people. Again, not a pitch for any sales here, but this has been tremendous in helping districts adhere to the letter of the law, but also dial in their privacy practices, which are now so important in the age of AI. So I know we have one of our colleagues on the Cite privacy services team joining us here today to listen in, and that team does a tremendous job. I am a consumer of it myself, and having had done it myself individually while I was at Colton Joint Unified School District, it has saved me a tremendous amount of time and a lot of stress, and I'm no longer as anxious as I am about student data privacy. So any questions about what Cite can do to help districts? Any questions about that resources? I'll be on the rest of the call today. Happy to help.
Thank you so much, David. I appreciate all of these resources that are available to districts. So thank you for that. I also wanted to thank you for, often I point out to teachers that technology tools aren't necessarily ed tech tools. And so and so we need to think of it that way, but thinking about the third party in a potential integrations is really important as well. So thank you for bringing that up. I did see in the chat, Christina had asked if there was a legal consultation to help develop the language, and it looks like they were developing F3. Okay.
So yeah, it's SBCSS, San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools, contracted with F3. And then once we got the template policies written, we kind of waived attorney-client privilege and said, this is too powerful to be kind of held within just our offices. And we actually first opened it up to the California County Superintendents Association through the TSC, and they have an AI resource kit. We put those templates in, and then I started through my work with Cite, said, hey, I think this is a really good opportunity to develop a resource guide, put our spin on it a little bit, tie it to a technical guide. So yes, definitely hand in hand with our partners at F3 to develop those to make sure that they are legally sound.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This is excellent. Really appreciate that. Remember, everyone, you can put questions in the chat if you'd like, and you'll be getting these resources as well. So this is great to hear all of these policies that need to be in place and all these things we need to think about, but how do you do that? How do you get districts on board? How do you kind of go through this process? And so we have the privilege now of hearing from Christopher Huang, who is going to be talking to us about just that, about working with districts and finding out guiding them in this process and what you should think about. So Chris, if you want to introduce yourself, and we'll get started. Thank you for being with us.
Oh, thanks for having me. And I feel like I don't need to cover everything because everything David did is the things I usually bring to the school districts anyways. So I'm like, oh, my part's done. We're good to go, right? I'm Christopher Hong. I work for the Los Angeles County Office of Ed. We've been working with the AI initiative. So ChatGPT was released, November 2022. So we're hitting year 2, guys. Really, it's just year 2. And we've been working on it since January. I was also on the TSC group with David when we were doing the AI stuff. And so our goal here at LACO is we realize there's a lot of knowledge in the county. We know there's a lot of knowledge throughout the state, and we leverage each other as much as possible. For safety and security, things like that, we do discuss this and we do bring it up. Could you go to the next slide, please? And so the first thing I'm going to bring up is I'm a gamer. This is going to sound so weird why I'm bringing this up. So I'm a gamer. I play video games in college. I was playing Ragnarok Online just because it was a little bit easier. I was pre-med that switched to education, which is a huge switch. I went from pre-med to education. I was never into technology really outside of gaming. Have any of you ever experienced a keylog? Or do you know what a keylogger is? Okay. A keylogger captures the strokes on your keyboard. So what happened, and this was my first experience with a data breach or exposing myself, is I had a friend, I didn't realize his account got hacked. So someone was logged in as him, pretending to be him. They sent me a file saying, hey, something's going on. Can you help me with it? I clicked the file, it booted me out of the game. I kept logging back in, didn't work, kept logging back in, didn't work, until it basically said your account has been compromised. I lost that account. And the reason I bring this up is because a lot of times we don't know what we don't know. Like there's no one out there that's going out there saying, hey, you need to learn about this. Hey, you need to learn about that. a lot of things we do learn tend to be from unfortunate experiences or very fortunate experiences, depending on which way you want to do it. And for me, I learned from that point forward, I need to be mindful of what I'm accepting, what I'm clicking on, all that fun stuff, because odds are right now, I bet you if I sent out a phishing email to everyone in here, odds are one of us would probably click it without realizing it was a phishing email, right? Full disclosure, even at LACO, we still have people clicking emails that they shouldn't click when we send out the a phishing test, right? Next slide. The thing is, AI is no different. In March 20, 2023, ChatGPT had a bug that basically released some data of user information. They were honest about it. They said, hey, we had an issue. This is what happened. We're mindful of it. We're going to take care of it. Microsoft had this issue where they released a bunch of information, like I think it was like 300 terabytes or some ridiculous amount of number on GitHub with their AI stuff. So our data is very important and we do need to secure and we need to take care of it. So across the board, this will happen. Every time someone asks, hey, is my data protected? I'm like 99.9% yes, but there's always that 0.1% because everything's technology, everything's in the cloud. We still have to be mindful of our PII. We still need to be mindful of our organizational information as much as possible because we want to protect everybody. And so what I do is, the next slide, please, is one of the first questions I ask, and I want you all to answer this question now as best as you can. Do you know all the programs your educators or your students are accessing? Yes or no, why or why not? Also, background story, I am a teacher, so I do believe in quiet time. I can wait. You guys don't like me. A majority, but not all. Right? You see the students at school, perfect. You can monitor what they're doing, perfect, great. So you see what's going on. Yeah, we log in without using official school logins. Yep, the program is on a down, so we can't monitor everything. In all honesty, we do as much as we can, but we can't do everything. Even like Jonathan, you and I work together. We do the best we can, and even then, we know we can't hit everything. And here's the thing: there's one thing that made this even harder, and we all love this feature. And this is the one feature I bring up where I go with everyone, every school district when I talk to them, and we gauge that single sign-on button with Google, with Microsoft. That's my favorite button. The moment you click it, though, I have an activity, and this is what I encourage y'all to do with your supervisors, your school district, everyone. Ask them if they read the private policies. And most of the time they don't, because we get in the habit of scrolling down and we click yes and we move forward without realizing what's going on. So what we do is we educate people on reading this policy so they understand what's going on. When I talk to the districts, I'm like, what are you doing with the policies? Do you know what's going on with it? And most of them it's like, no, but we're learning now. No, but now we're starting to read it because as much as AI, generative AI blew up everything, it actually gave us some idea of, hey, we have to be mindful of our data. And more people are looking at their data. So when I talk to the districts or the districts talk to me, we talk about private policies. We talk about it in a way that makes sense. And that's why I bring up how I was hacked and how ChatGPT released information is just helping people get real life scenarios so they understand what's going on. Next slide. And then how do you know what your school district, or community needs, right? We talk a lot about, oh, we know what our teachers want. Oh, we know what our schools need. We know what our community wants. But in reality, do we? We assume a lot of the times. A lot of the school districts I go to, I talk to them, I'm asking them, what does your school need? What's going on with your school? When we talk about ed tech, what type of programs are your teachers using? Why? What type of programs are your students using? Why? And it's just opening up that conversation. The more you can open up the conversation, the better. And it's no judgment. I tell them it's okay if things have happened, because one of the charges of the county office of ed, one of the things we do is if a school is hacked and is part of a cybersecurity exploit, our goal is to go in there and help them remediate it and get back on track. Next slide. So one of the things that we do is surveys are hard, right? If I sent out a survey to my staff right now, I'm 99% sure they're not going to be 100% honest because they feel like it's being tracked. And if they give me some bad feedback, they're assuming I'm going back to them saying, hey, why'd you give me this bad feedback? And so what we did at the County Office of Ed is we wanted to know what's going on at the district, and we wanted the district to get their own information as well. So we partnered up with Project Tomorrow Speak Up surveys. They go out, they create a whole survey, they generate it, and they can break it down by school site. They can break it down by school district and provide the school district that information so they have something to work with. A lot of times we don't know what we're working with, and in every school district I've talked to, like, we don't know what's going on. At the district office, they might say one thing, but the school site level, they're going to say something else. So by partnering up with them, we're able to get actual data, and that's where we learn with artificial intelligence in LA County for last school year. So 23-24, about 20% of all educators were using generative AI, right? 20%. And the assumption was, oh, it's a lot higher because every conference I'm going to is talking about AI. In reality, it wasn't. So that's our starting point. And so by knowing how many teachers actually understood or were using AI, that's where we're able to talk to them. And then from there, we're able to train and talk and discuss how do we actually protect your data, right? Next slide. So with all this in mind, as we're talking to the school districts, as we're talking to them, what we do is we bring together everyone that should be in the decision-making process. So in your opinion, in the chat, who should be in the decision-making process of anything related to ed tech or AI or data privacy? Everyone from students to superintendent, partners, students, teachers, family, staff. Nope. Look, Christina brought in the whole C-suite. Yeah. So we all know this. We say teachers, admin, parents, students. The reality is, as we go out to the district, there's two groups that are generally left off. Do you know which two groups are generally left off? Parents and students. Yep, 100%. They're usually left off. It's not the teachers, the parents and students, oddly enough. So what we do is we ask them to bring everyone together. So we have town halls. So when we work with the district, we want to engage on how do we talk about privacy? How do we talk about this? And at the end of the day, it comes to education. And so we bring in the families, we bring in the teachers, we bring in the communities, and we train and we work with them and helping them understand all this. Next month is the month where we kick off Digital Citizenship Week, right? Next month is also Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So what we focus on is bringing the families together and helping them understand what's going on and making it a real community event. So if we're going to engage in data privacy, we need to bring everyone together to help understand what's going on, because if they don't understand, they're going to make the same mistakes over and over again. This is where the digital literacy, the media literacy, the AI literacy comes into effect. Next slide. And so what we recommend when we work at the district is evaluate all the programs your school is using, right? A lot of schools use Clever, a lot of schools use ClassLink, Schoology, any of that. See what programs they're using and actually pay attention if they're using it. We recommend, if a school district can afford it, to hire a cybersecurity team. Not like that one IT person that also does cybersecurity, but like a separate cybersecurity team itself. Because that IT person's already swamped and you're going to add on cybersecurity on top, it's not going to happen. So we recommend this because they can help check for leaks, they can help check for data issues, any of that stuff, and make it a collaborative effort where everyone continues to learn and train from each other. Next slide. And so the big thing is take the zero trust approach. And the zero trust approach is you just assume your data is going to leak. You don't trust anything. You don't work with anything. LACO is very restrictive, and I know the teachers get upset about how restrictive it is, but people can't even install a Google Chrome extension unless they submit a help desk ticket and the cybersecurity team signs off on it, right? Because we want to protect that data. So we're trying to do the best we can to protect everyone. But the most important thing that we've learned just talking to the district about data privacy, safety, and concern is training. At this point, we have to imagine that we've wiped the slate clean. Generative AI blew everything up. We have to start from scratch, and we have to re-educate everyone. We're all coming out of COVID fatigue. We're coming out of the whole, that was 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 3 years, 4 years ago, 4 years ago, Jesus. That was 4 years ago. We're learning at home, and the assumption a lot of educators have, a lot of parents have, a lot of students have is we already know how to use the technology. using it and actually understanding how to use it, two different things. And so we're trying to train and work with educators, parents, and students and school administrators across the board. We talk to them, we engage. We're like, how are you training your students? How are you training your staff? How are you training your parents? Is it an actual collaborative approach? If it's not a collaborative approach, it's going to fall apart. Even with the AI policy for us here at LACO, in order for us to adopt any AI program, it's not just the cybersecurity team that says yes. It's also the education side that says yes. It's also the students they say yes. We have a cohesive group that comes together. They look at the programs and like, yes, this makes sense. Let's go ahead and release it. And it meets all the security needs that one, we use sites as a starting point. We're like, hey, was this signed off by site or does this organization sign off on site? And if they say yes, it makes life a lot easier. And then we just go from there. Right. And so with that, I'm going to be on here for a little bit longer, kind of like David, and I'm going to turn it back over to you, Kat.
Thank you so much. Wow, I love the approach and the reminder that we need to show these real life examples, because sometimes it does seem, if I just read the policies, the great resources that site created, if I'm a parent, I'm an educator, I might not really understand that this is, oh, well, does this really happen? And so having those real life examples are really important. I also so appreciate the way that you are going out into the community. I know David talked about the need to do that as well. And so excellent to hear that. Thank you so much for being with us. You talked a lot about educating the community and educating educators themselves, which I think is awesome. But we also, something else you brought up is the students themselves. And so we have Delane Johnson with us here today, and Delane is going to speak to what do we do with students? How do we teach them? Christopher, you talked about how we need to actually understand how this technology works. How do we do that with students, Delane? If you could introduce yourself and then let us know what you've done in the classroom regarding data privacy and getting our students caught up to speed.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm Delane Johnson. I teach AP Computer Science Principles. I'm also a tech integration coach. So I teach at Clovis East. I work with K-12 school sites for Clovis Unified. And my role is to be what teachers and students need in the moment. And right now, there is a lot of AI happening without a lot of understanding. So I have a question for you all. How many of you read privacy policies? Right. Yeah. Oh, I love it. My school site, my school district uses Site. I am so appreciative that they read the privacy policies for me. But many of us don't have access to that, or we have to start somewhere. So there is a statistic that came from the Pew Research Center that shows that, go ahead and click for the little transition to work. 6 out of 10 Americans don't read a privacy policy. You can imagine what that looks like for our students. If the adults are not reading, what are the kids doing? Oh, this looks great, let's go, right? So how do I approach students with privacy policies? I love using this lesson. Of course, I have high school students and we take baby steps with the littles. But yes, what search terms do we use? I actually bring in privacy policies from multiple platforms that students use. They cannot access these services on our school's network, right? So we're looking at TikTok, we're looking at PlayStation. I make PDFs of the privacy policies and I help them find words. So let's take a look at some of the words that we used to use when we were looking at privacy policies. You would look for things like data, ownership, control, location. Location, students have no idea that their phones are tracking them. So I get to introduce them to settings on their phones. And all of a sudden, they're aware that the map has been following them for the last 2 years, everywhere that they've been. Now with AI services, there's a whole different set of words that we need to introduce them to. For example, bias in data. Where is the data coming from? You may jump on an AI service and ask it to write your essay, but can you trust it? So maybe you want to read through the terms of service. Oh, and the privacy policy, because by the way, there are 2 things that you have to read, not just one. It takes about 17 hours to go through it. Isn't that delightful? So I provide students with this list of terms. Look for bias, look for accura, as in accurate, accuracy, inaccurate. Every AI platform has a different phrase to tell you that they might not be correct. The beautiful thing about being a Californian, we also have an extra set of rules that AI platforms have to explain to us. So I attached a link to an article by our Attorney General, Rob Bonta. It has some great questions to ask when you're looking at an AI service, things like what personal information is it collecting? And so walking through students, I let them pick any platform they want, and we learn about Control F. So take a look at some of the Control F results that I found on a very popular AI platform that I personally love. For example, how many instances of the word own can you find? There are 25 instances of the word own, but hit the next button. And these are the things that I want students to look for. What happens to your content? When you are using an AI service for free, that means you are the content. If it's free, you're the product. So we're looking for things like what happens when you put in information. Teachers may not be aware that they are accidentally uploading student data when they're looking to use a service. So here is the big piece that I pull out with my students. And if you hit the next button, it's this area about input and output. Being a computer science teacher, it's important for me to talk to students about input and output, and it's literally in the terms of service for your data that you give to the service. So I'm asking them to look for input and output. What happens to what you put in? Guess what? It belongs to them. So now let's look at the privacy policy. So this was just the terms of service for a popular AI platform. In the privacy policy, the word California gave me this beautiful result. Look at all of the things that this service does that they have to outline for me. It's a lot of data. Do our students need to be using this during school hours when they are collecting things like geolocation? And Christina mentioned earlier, IP address. Wait. What am I willingly giving to a company in order to get a result? Is it worth the time and effort? Maybe I don't want them to know my IP address. Maybe I don't want them to know my first name and last name. So I get to introduce PII, the phrase personally identifiable information. Students often haven't heard that as a senior or as a sophomore. So the question about incognito, our students actually don't have access to incognito while at school. So it's not a process that I can introduce to them unless it's on their personal device after school hours. And I don't know that I want to be the one that introduces that. I love shopping on incognito, but I don't want my students up to shenanigans during school hours. So let's take a look at another search term. And in this case, I was looking for the word, I believe, bias. In the privacy policy, bias did not exist, but in the terms and service, bias did exist. So students have to know the difference between the two policies that they need to read to make sure that, is this something you really, really want to use? So when I ask them to look at TikTok, when I ask them to look at Discord and write down all of the data that's being collected on them, I can see the light bulb go off. Like, wait a second, they're doing what? How? Why is that okay? Is a question I get a lot. And I said, well, you agreed to it. That's why it's okay. So we get to have these really powerful discussions. Now, I know that this is typically a high school lesson, digging through privacy policies. It changes their world. I often hear back from students after they've graduated, and they told me that before I sign any service, they're reading the privacy policy, and I feel like I've won. So what can we do? Let's take a look at the next slide. I had a fabulous conversation this morning with Joe Marquez, one of my colleagues, and I wanted to showcase something that he loves to do. He goes to ChatGPT for privacy. So he gives Chat a role. And here was the prompt that we did this morning. So you're a data privacy expert. You've been tasked with reviewing terms of service and privacy policies. I need you to look at the student data that is collecting according to the rules of FERPA, COPPA, and CIPA. right? Do you understand me? And chat said, yeah, I've got it. I understand my role. This is what I'm looking for. Let me know when you're ready. So I pasted the privacy policy for a very popular AI platform specifically for education. And it summarized everything. I did not have to spend 17 hours reading the privacy policy, but here's what it told me that I should be aware of as a teacher and administrator. So I used an AI platform to tell me about an AI platform to make it a little bit easier for me to search through it. I can imagine that I could do this very easily with my students as well, asking an AI platform to summarize a popular service that they like to use to get that ethical use that Christopher was talking about. How can we show them? How can we model how to use AI in an ethical way? So I was really delighted with this particular process. That bit.ly link is a link to the actual chat GPT that we use, so you can see the full privacy policy that was placed in and the full response. It was a solid 3 paragraphs for chat's role as a data privacy expert. So just a fun activity that you could do with any grade level. You could also tell it that I'm a 3rd grader and I'm trying to understand a data privacy policy, and it would change the language structure to make it easier for your students to understand. A great little activity. Where do you get started? Okay, so I've looked at a privacy policy, but my students still might need a little bit of help understanding AI. This is one of my favorite lessons to start with, AI for oceans. They're training an AI to identify trash in the ocean. Is it trash? Is it not trash? It's a great way for students to understand data sets and in a very fun, interactive method. Now, it is for grades 3 through 12. I would probably do more manipulatives from a computer science standpoint for the youngers on how do we sort feelings, right? So we're working on descriptive writing to understand those data sets. As we get a little bit older and they understand AI more, this is a 5th grade lesson that I did last week. I wanted to know what students knew about natural resources. So my district has access to Adobe Express. Adobe Express has Gen AI tools in it. Their task was to make an image with their understanding of a lesson on natural resources. So I want to show you the results of 3 students. In it, these 3 students have different language accessibility. The student on the left is your typical 5th grader. The student on your far right is an English language learner. Do all 3 of these students understand natural resources in a descriptive writing prompt in order to get an image that they're hoping to create? It was the most fantastic lesson. The kids were blown away by what the AI could create for them, while also demonstrating to me and to the teacher that they understood the content. So there's lots of different ways to be able to use generative AI with those guardrails in a safe and effective manner. Lots and lots of resources. But I wanted to share this quick and simple lesson. We were looking at quick writes and descriptive writing, and AI fit the bill to help us with the content. The other piece that I was hoping to share with you was how I use it with my high school students. When AI is used, they need to tell me. So I was gifted this website, Attribution for AI. That's the long link. And John, I'm drawing a blank on John's last name. I apologize. John created these icons to help identify when AI has been used for student work. So there are 5 different icons made by AI, and modified by humans, made by a human, and modified by AI. So I'm asking my students to use these icons in their work portfolios when they have opted to use AI to support their writing, to create an image, or to actually code. And if you look on the next slide, this is my requirements. So what I'm asking for is show me what logo. You need to tell me what product you used. Like, what were you expecting? So what platform you used, what date you used it, and what your prompt or prompts were. Effectively, they're writing me an essay about their AI use in the hopes that they'll do the work on their own. So I know that AI is great for revising grammar. I need you to cite it. I know that it's great for summarizing the resource. I also need you to cite that. We're talking about ethical use of a platform that's readily available to you. How are you using it? Let me guide you. So this is just one example. I have another teacher that asks for the URL as well. So you have to share your chat with me by giving me the URL so I can see all of the different modifications that you made. And I love that extension of this. So I'm going to be adding that next year.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Delane, for sharing. Thanks to all of our speakers. We so appreciate all that you are doing, volunteering your time to share the great resources that you have created and the strategies of reaching out to educators and districts and students and parents. So absolutely appreciate all of you. Thank you to all of you that are here watching live, or perhaps you're watching the pre-recorded version, which is in the future for us, but the now for you. Anyway, so if you have any questions and you are here with us live, feel free to share in the chat, ask any questions for our speakers. I will, just to let you know what's coming next, anyone that did register for this webinar will be sent an email with links to the CDE AI resources, actually it'll be a link to these slides, any resources that were mentioned in the webinar, and a feedback form. And then the recording link will be sent once that is ready as well. Now, actually, next week, we are going to talk more about data, terms of use. We're going to have Common Sense with us. We are going to have Mike Lawrence, who is a technology director, I believe is the title, at a district in Southern California. So we are going to delve into this even more and have more resources for you. So if you have not already registered, please feel free to do so. And if you haven't connected with us, if you'd like to be on our computer science listserv, I will put this information in the email that will go to you as well. And I want to thank you for all that you do. So I'm hearing some thank yous, quite a few thank yous in the chat. So thank you to our speakers. And we'll stay on for another couple minutes in case there are any questions. But thank you to all of you for all that you're doing to keep our kids safe.